4,500 acres out of production, dead trees on the ground, and the rule that might explain it hasn't even been written yet. You're listening to the SGMA Weekly, your 10-minute briefing on everything happening in California groundwater. Brought to you by Water1.ai. I'm your AI host. Let's get into it. And stick around. On Friday, after every one of this week's meetings had adjourned, the Colorado River finally got its new rulebook. We'll get to what that means. We start in the Tule subbasin, where the conversation about the state water board's potential pumping restrictions near the Friant-Kern Canal changed shape this week. Up to now, this has mostly been framed as a canal problem, a possible moratorium within a couple of miles of the waterway to slow the land subsidence that's damaging it. But at the water blueprint for San Joaquin Valley board meeting, members warned that what they described as the Department of Water Resources' new critical head threshold reaches well beyond the canal corridor. One Tule subbasin board member put it plainly, it's not just along the canal, it's going to affect the entire Tule subbasin. And she wasn't speaking hypothetically. She told the board she already has 4,500 acres out of production with dead trees. Her words, this isn't academic anymore. Meanwhile, over at Porterville Irrigation District's Groundwater Sustainability Agency, that's GSA, the local agencies that manage groundwater under SGMA, staff offered a reality check. The state's plan itself is still conceptual. No draft has been released. The Tule GSAs are assembling their own locally controlled land subsidence urgency plan, pumping caps, mandatory well registration, and metering and enforcement, as the alternative they'd rather live under. As we reported last week, the state's rollout could move as fast as adoption in early 2027. The trees aren't waiting for the paperwork. Next up, the California Water Commission got a sobering presentation from the Department of Water Resources, DWR, on its vision for the San Joaquin Valley. The bottom line from DWR staff: even if every proposed supply project gets built, the recharge, the conveyance fixes, the new storage, all of it together is still not enough to bring the valley's groundwater basins into sustainability on their own. Significant demand management will still be needed. DWR didn't put an acreage number on that conclusion, but local speakers on the same panel did. They urged the commission to start securing resources now to transition at least 500,000 acres of land, a figure one speaker described as the low end of what the Public Policy Institute of California has identified. And they stressed the timeline has compressed. GSAs are already issuing allocations and assessments that some growers can't pay, and millions of dollars in unpaid assessments are being sent to county tax rolls, roughly $9 million at Greater Kaweah alone. This is no longer a 2040 problem. It's a now problem. Here's the thing about the next story. There's money on the table, and almost nobody is taking it. In the Estrella El Pomar Creston area near Paso Robles, the Fallowed Land Registry's Small Farm Assistance Program offers a one-time cash rebate to growers with 2 to 20 irrigated acres who commit to keeping land fallow through the end of 2039, secured by a county-managed deed restriction. There's roughly $730,000 in the fund. An estimated 300 growers are eligible. Fewer than 10 have applied since applications opened in late June. For scale, staff walked through an example. 10 acres of alfalfa works out to about $33,000. Now, board members did raise a fair question. Outside the deed-restricted rebate itself, there's no clearly defined process yet for how growers exit the registry, resume irrigating, or switch crops under county rules. And staff are taking that question to the county. But if you're a small grower in that basin already thinking about fallowing ground, this is worth a phone call. Moving on to the Colorado River side of the state, where Palo Verde Irrigation District trustees spent part of their meeting on a problem that will sound familiar to anyone who farms under a contract. Someone reread the agreement. Metropolitan Water District has reinterpreted key provisions of the forbearance and fallowing agreement. And under the new reading, land coming out of fallow has to be actively farmed for 12 consecutive months before it can go back into the program. That's a departure from more than 20 years of practice. And the timing is the real problem. A large amount of ground comes out of fallow on January 1st, and under the new interpretation, none of it can rotate back in quickly. Trustees also referenced a letter indicating the fallowing call is being reduced after January 1st, with a possible return to higher levels in August. If you're trying to make planting decisions on that schedule, that's a genuinely hard puzzle. The district's Water Rights Committee plans to meet with Metropolitan to push back, arguing the agreement was never meant to interfere with normal farming practice. Both sides have a real interest here. Metropolitan needs the water program to work, and Palo Verde growers need it to work with farming. Worth watching how they land it. And one more from the Tule subbasin, because this one turns policy into a line item. After holding its Proposition 218 hearing, the Porterville Irrigation District GSA Board adopted a groundwater extraction fee of $50.67 per acre per year. The protest process ran its course. Just 13 parcels filed written protests, far short of a majority. And the resolution passed. Two things growers there should understand. First, this is a separate charge, stacked on top of the existing irrigation district assessment. One bill for surface water, one for groundwater management. Second, it applies to the current period, including back to October of 2025. Several small acreage landowners pushed back at the hearing, asking why a 5-acre parcel pays the same per-acre rate as a large operation. Staff acknowledged the concern and said the goal is to keep costs as low as possible as startup work winds down. It's a hard balance every GSA is walking. The sustainability work has to be funded, and the people funding it are the same growers absorbing every other new cost. Now let's talk trends in the valley. First, the 5-year plan reviews are where the state's homework actually comes due. Every GSA has to periodically reevaluate its groundwater sustainability plan, and this cycle, DWR's corrective actions, are forcing real changes. Up in Butte County, Wyandotte Creek's draft amendments remove what you might call the drought exemption. Previously, an undesirable result only counted if thresholds were crossed in 2 consecutive non-dry years, meaning accountability paused during drought. Staff said DWR recommended the change, and under the new definition, 2 consecutive years below the line count, wet year or dry. In the eastern San Joaquin Basin, the stakes are sharper. Draft responses to DWR's technical comments are due October 1st, and a negative ruling could put the basin on a path toward probation. The message in both places is the same. The era of grading your own homework is ending. Second, building on the final environmental impact statement we covered 2 weeks ago, the Colorado River finally got its new rulebook. On Friday, August 21st, after every meeting in this week's coverage had already wrapped, the Interior Department issued the Record of Decision for coordinated operations of Lake Powell and Lake Mead through 2036, along with operating guidelines for the first 2 years. The agencies we cover spent the week positioning for exactly this. Metropolitan staff briefed their committee that both reservoirs had fallen to their lowest levels since they were first filled. Palo Verde staff told trustees litigation from 1 or more states was widely anticipated once the decision landed. And Metropolitan's general manager said he'd be meeting with Imperial Irrigation District to restart talks on how California shares shortage internally, aiming for board consideration this fall. The rulebook is out. Now comes the hard part. Agreeing on who absorbs what. Third, a quieter one. Interconnected surface water keeps showing up as the state's red pen. At Sacramento Central, the message came from 2 directions. The DWR staffer in the room said the state's 3 published papers on interconnected surface water should be incorporated into the periodic evaluation, and a neighboring basin manager reported hearing that DWR expects even more from GSMES on the topic. South San Joaquin listed it among the 6 areas of DWR concern it has to answer by October 1st. And it's putting a new monitoring well in a City of Ripon parking lot near the Stanislaus River, drilling targeted for this fall, to fill exactly that data gap. Wyandotte Creek acknowledged the same hole, with 5 years of data collection planned before it sets criteria. If your basin's plan is thin on how groundwater pumping affects rivers and streams, expect questions. And finally, districts are quietly getting smarter with their idle cash. Redwood Valley County Water District discussed moving $250,000 from a checking account earning next to nothing into the state's local agency investment fund, earning roughly 3.5% to 4.5%. Madera Irrigation District heard a pitch on fixed-term options that could nudge returns above 4%. And Westlands brought on a new investment advisor for its public funds. None of this is headline material on its own, but as assessments rise across the valley, what agencies earn on the float is real money. And boards are starting to treat it that way. That's your SGMA Weekly. If you want the full details on every board meeting we covered, head to water1.ai. You can read the complete recaps, and if you want to dig deeper, try Chat GSA. Just ask it anything about your district, and it'll pull up the answers from the latest meetings. I'm your AI host. Stay informed, and I'll see you next week.